All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Dumb SEO Questions, episode 270. Each week we meet here to answer the questions asked on the SEO Questions community on Google Plus, and also the Dumb SEO Questions Facebook group. With us tonight, and it's my fault, we have Ammon Johns. Ammon is, well, one of my heroes anyway. Ammon is based in the UK, and William Rock is based in the USA. William is an SEO of long times. Both of them are proud to call themselves SEOs, and William is based in Kansas. He's also a Google top contributor on the Google web search. All right, I'm sorry about that stumbling intro. I'm a little bit befuddled today. All right, let's look at our first question. This one from Usman Ali on should we use Chrome for making backlinks? He said, as Google can track our history, etc. Wow, I think Usman is a little, yeah. Well, I don't think so. What do you guys think?
Well, you know, we do answer some dumb questions. I think the sensible thing to note is first here is if you're worried about Google tracking you making these backlinks, you probably shouldn't be making those backlinks in the first place. If you are not proud of them and you're worried about being tracked making them, why waste your time on those? Why not go out and do the backlinks that are worthwhile? Because I guarantee you the kind of backlinks you worry about Google knowing about aren't counting for anything anyway.
Exactly. And I really don't think, I mean, I think people give Google too much credit, that they really wouldn't be bothered trying to do that via Chrome. They'd soon know about it from the link grab.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody really hasn't thought through this one, have they?
Well, if you also look at like Majestic SEO, I mean, that they're going to actually give a graph of exactly when that link was built and how many were built in that day. So not just Google Chrome doing it, but there's other third-party tools that are actually able to find and detect that before and without a browser.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next. This one from Hardy L. Singh. It was asked on our SEO Questions community on Google Plus. It's titled "Looking to Change the Domain in Order to Target an International Audience." Hardy L. said, he said, "I'm looking to change the domain in order to target an international/US audience. Currently the domain is .is, the top level domain for Iceland. Would like to have some expert comments on the following. One, what are the key criteria that we need to evaluate when changing a company domain from a search, branding, and business process, like changing email accounts perspective? How important is using .com versus .net or .us from a search perspective and branding perspective? 3, how does Google treat using numbers like first or hyphens in domain? For example, abc-xyz-consulting.com.
Yeah, so we've got a compound question and a big one. the first thing is, when you're changing to an international focus, I would say the first thing you want to be doing is thinking about this from a marketing perspective. How are you going to explain what you're doing to customers in a way that matters to them, rather than we want more business and we're trying to get more people from around the world? You know, you've got to have a reason, a story behind why you've gone from being an Iceland specific company to, you know, an international brand. So certainly have some of that backstory in there, have a rationale and therefore a marketing message for the move. The key criteria, it's going to be complicated. It's a bit like when you're migrating a domain anyway. There are always a lot of things to consider. There's always going to be a certain lag between moving those pages over, especially the important pages, the pages, things like, you know, the home page and category pages. And then the deep level pages take longer because there's less links pointing to them. They're less important in Google's priority of crawling. For the email accounts, you want to have the old ones work for a little while, but you want to move to the new ones. Make sure that the signature files are branded for the new ones. But you're going to need a catch-all for a while, the same as you will do for domains. That you'll be using the new domains. You'll have your canonicals and your sitemaps all changed to the new domains, but you'll still 301 the old URLs for usually. If you've got a long history, you want to keep those old URLs active for about a year. And then you'd be tracking hits to those. You know, if after a year there's almost no traffic going to them, you know, they can go. It's a complex process. I would say if you don't know exactly what you're doing, that might be where you'd want to pull in a specific expert to look at the specific cases. We can give a general answer, which is, you know, what we're doing, but sometimes the specifics are a bit more tricky. What was the second part of this again, Jim?
There are three parts. Let me look. I reset it. I'll start. The second part is how important is using .com versus .net or .us from a search perspective and a branding perspective.
Yeah. And then the hyphens. Okay, so definitely for people, .com is, you know, .com is the saying. You know, we talk about the .com bubble, we talk about the .com industry. We don't talk about the .us industry or the .us bubble. Technically, US is, of course, a CCTLD, a country specific. It's just almost no Americans use it. They all regard .com as their own. .com is supposed to be the international, along with .net and .gov. .net is really one of those that tends to be used only when the .com's gone. And from a branding perspective, it often tells people, oh, look, there's a company that couldn't get the .com. So .com is always the stronger. Hyphens in domains, sometimes to get the words you want, you're going to need to use hyphens because the other versions are gone. It's adding extra characters you don't need. It's a little trickier to read to people over the phone. So on a branding perspective, hyphens are not ideal. They're there, but you've then got to make sure that all of your salesmen, all of your telephone contacts and so on and so forth are, you know, specifically mentioning the hyphenation of the name. Beyond that, I've always preferred brand names rather than, you know, EMDs, exact match domains. I think that you do need to look at the fact there was a books.com before there was an amazon.com, but Amazon won the book trade. There was a search.com long before there was a google.com, but Google won the search trade. A memorable brand name is always more important than keywords in the domain. Always. People will just use it more, recognize it more, understand it more.
Thank you, Eamon. Okay, let's proceed to the next. I'll just tweet that first. Okay, this one from Enrico Rios. It's titled "A Quick Question About hreflang." Enrique said, "Hi guys, a quick question about hreflang." He said, "Well, I hope so. I have a page that serves as an umbrella for 10 other local websites. Some of the local websites are bilingual too. The question is that the local websites are independent of each other and they're not interlinked. So the main site would be website.com/home.html. It has hreflang in 12 language tags for the 10 pages. 2 of them are bilingual, like, for example, website.com/US-EN and website.com/US-ES. How would the language? How would the language tag be for the other 10 pages? My first thought is at home level of the local pages would have hreflang with all other languages and locations. However, as they are independent and they have no communication with each other, I'm not sure if I only need to implement the hreflang tags only in the bilingual sites at deeper levels. This was asked on our SEO Questions community on Google+.
I do think that most of the time you've specified a language somewhere. You should. hreflang is really good for when you need to specify particular markets, particularly if you need to differentiate between various forms of English. Most of the time, though, with English, you won't. There are times when you want to be a little bit more careful. I think some of the different regions that use the base language of Spanish are more different than countries that use different versions of English. I mean, basically, you know, with English, most of us speak it exactly the same. And then there's the Americans that just can't spell. But other than that, English is pretty simple. I think if you've just got an EN, you're usually fine. When you're specifying particular region for audience attraction, yes, that's when it becomes more important. But I always think that the domain will be a stronger signal, and the content in the pages will be a stronger signal than just using a href. It's a complex question again. I would really want to see the exact structure of these sites before making a hard call on this. General rules. There's a lot of information out there generally on dealing with international sites. It is its own form of SEO. I would say that you want to spend some time on reading up on the various options of this. Honestly, it's too complex for me to take a stab at this one. There's too many things I could get wrong through not having seen what we're talking about.
Yeah, true enough. Yes, it's a deep question, isn't it? All right, let's move on. I'm sorry, Enrique. The reason Amon answered your question perfectly well, I think. The reason that we don't have more second opinions on our hangout tonight, my fault. I didn't make it. All right, let's move on to the next. This one from Lauren Miller it's titled, "Is there any issue if one word is repeated 2 times in the URL?" I'll just say no. Amon, what say you?
Well, it's not a thing that's going to cause a penalty or anything like that. Is it optimal? No. obviously, you know, the shorter a URL is, the easier it is for somebody to type in if they had to, the better. Usability wise is one of the things you look at. It just looks redundant. You know, if you've already got luxury cars is the category, then we expect everything under that to be luxury cars. So just having a 2.5 litre subsection within luxury cars is enough of a clue for both people and for the search engines. I think you're just overusing the keywords for the sake of using the keywords.
Yeah. All right, let's tweet that and I'll go to the next. Toka Janelle asked a question titled, "My HTTP 301 redirects to HTTPS version." He said, "I moved my website to HTTPS today. Google's Search Console updated my referring domains list in the HTTPS version report. It only shows new domains which link to my HTTPS version, not old ones which used to link or which link to the HTTP version. Is that okay, or is something incorrect? PS, my HTTP 301 redirects to HTTPS. Go ahead, Emma.
This is a factor when dealing with security. The entire point is that some parts are encrypted and some parts aren't. We know that, you know, when you go to a secure site, HTTPS, and it's got elements on it that are HTTP, we get the little warning. Some elements of this page are insecure. So it's connected to that. You've got a level of insecurity, a level of changeover that's going on. One of the things when you're moving to HTTPS is you usually have to set up the HTTPS site separately in GSC. You kind of need to track both versions because, yeah, the data won't always be passed across. It is treating them as different sites. And the level of reporting is affected by the way that the security systems work, that it won't automatically pull in data from an insecure version if you specify to use a secure version. One of the things when losing the keywords was this was the time that Google was switching over, and there were going to be issues anyway with tracking referrals when you were talking about two different protocols.
Okay.
I would say that it's one of those things you're going to have to work around. Some of it is technical, but make sure you've got both domains set up in GSC and make sure that you're spending a little bit of time to connect the dots yourself.
Fantastic. Okay, let's go to the next. Toka, I hope you're happy with that. Toka has another question. It's titled, "Should I noindex about us, contact us, and such pages?" Since it's all linked to all pages of the website, they gain some internal link juice. Gee, I hate that word, which really isn't needed for them.
Exactly. Should I put evidence on my site that I am trying to sculpt my page rank? No, absolutely not. You know, you're putting evidence there that you are trying to manipulate your link popularity, which is against Google's terms of contract. You know, the webmaster guidelines are very, very clear about link manipulation. Bad idea. Those pages anyway about us can be important to people. Yes, people rarely search for it. Contact us, they do though. Contact X company is a search term that is used. If you're not seeing it very much, maybe your brand's not very strong. But looking for contact details for companies is a thing people do. The about us is less used from search, but it is an important part of the journey through the site. And if you're no indexing it, well, the links there aren't going to help you. And like I say, ultimately you're showing, this doesn't make sense for users. It's only about the link juice, which you've kind of pointed out yourself there, which you're not supposed to be messing around with. So if you want a penalty, this would be a really good way to go around trying to earn one.
Yep. And can I add there, Ammon, when privacy policies first came out, on a set of my sites, I put a pro forma privacy policy for people to copy from.
Mm-hmm.
And I accidentally left a link on it and I swear it was accidentally, and I left a link on it to my site, and we got thousands of these links, and I didn't work it out, but it was people taking the pro forma, cut and paste it, and along with it went the link back to my site. Anyway, things that happen.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yes, it's useful. Leave it indexed, and somebody will find a use for it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the next. I'll tweet that.
Ultimately, the root there, the core rule we're looking at is, if you're going to try and manipulate your page rank, don't do it in a way that everyone can see. It's a black hat technique, and if you're leaving evidence of doing it, that's a very, very foolish thing to be doing.
Yeah. All right. Cassie Richardson has a question. It's titled Optimizing Google My Business for Multi-Location Businesses. Cassie said, when optimizing GMB for Google My Business for multi-location businesses, is it better to send all to homepage or landing page for all locations, or send each Google My Business listing to the location page for that specific location? I have a customer with 8 locations. Their website has the primary location contact information in the header, all location contact info in the footer, and then individual location pages for each one. There are many explainable factors as to why their primary listing shows up in most searches, while the others don't. But I'm wondering if the destination URL for each Google My Business listing makes a difference or not. Thanks in advance.
Yeah, it really does. Google My Business is a lot more local focused than most things. It's always much more interested in where the business is located. So you want at least a page that is specific to each one, and even then the information on it would need to be why this is a regional listing, rather than the fact if all you've got is a token present there, you're on risky ground. However, the fact that you can have local job vacancies in that particular office, you can talk about the specific things that you do in that office. We used to talk about companies that have lots of different spaces when we were talking about, say, a renovations company, a building company. You would talk about what specific kind of building materials were used in the different regions and why that regional specificality was important. With your offices, you're doing a similar thing. Honestly, the strongest way is to have a different site for each, and then have a parent company site as well that links to all of the sub-sites. If your business isn't that locally focused, you're slightly weaker off anyway. Yeah, you can have a section on the site, but we're kind of getting into the area where you've got potentially thin content pages, you want to show up for local search, but you're not showing why you are important to the users of that search. You know, Google know that you would love to be listed for everything. What you've got to show is how this matters to the user, how this improves their experience. And unless you've got something in that section that is specific to that region that helps people in that region, even if it's only in finding jobs, it's tricky.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next. Here's a question from Danny Decker. It's titled Targeting Similar Keywords. He said, hi, a question about www.website.com/this-part. I've been searching my website on Google and sometimes it comes up, but I feel that I'm not covering my main keywords enough in the part after .com. And this is my idea. I take all of my main keywords and I make articles with useful tools for those with the .com keywords here. He said, okay, this is normal. Now my point, I want to make separate or brackets similar articles for the different brackets, not phrase match, but somewhat similar keywords. This comes to around 10 variations of each keyword of my around 10 main keywords, thus 100 articles. Yes or no? No. Go ahead, Eamon.
What we're dealing with is one of those compromises. Let's be absolutely straight. Keywords in URLs are still very powerful, and you know, exact matches or close to are still very powerful. However, using near duplicate content or thin content, where a lot of the page is very similar to other pages, and all you've really changed is some of the phrasing, is very, very bad, and it will outweigh the benefit you're getting from the keywords. So you need to make sure that you have enough important differentiation in the content to justify those extra pages. Now, if you understand that that is a criteria, you can almost always find a way of making the content that's going to be more specific, and in which case you can have all those extra pages. Just don't think that just tweaking the copy a bit is going to be enough. You'd be wanting to look at W shingles. Shingles are where a search engine takes sections of words, it tokenizes, you know, short phrases, and then looks for the duplication of those across pages. There's a lot of ways it can detect if your content is near duplication, and that's even before semantics, where it can just say, well, hang on, all I've done is go through a thesaurus and swap, you know, one word for something that means almost the same. Yeah. Find unique content, find a unique hook for the visitor for each of those pages, and it's a great idea. If you don't do that, it's a very, very bad idea. Is that clear enough?
I think so. Okay, let's go to the next. Eunice Berman asked the question titled, will PageRank pass to posts/pages that are set to no index? Eunice said, hi SEOs, second dumb question of the year, TLDR, will PageRank pass to post pages that are set to no index? More details. I want to build a website and have a personal section on it. Obviously, I don't care about ranking those posts, as they offer probably no value to the target audience. And why write them? But I want to write more freely on my blog rather than target keywords all the time. I know that PageRank gets diluted on all pages, and therefore authority is divided amongst those pages. And what I want to know is whether any PageRank would pass to the posts I would set to noindex, or even keep out of the sitemap and robot file if I could. Also, I don't want to waste crawl budget on those pages. Would noindex drop the crawl? Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Now, the first thing we have to notice is we've said no index, but we're not exactly sure how this is being done. I assume with no index that we are talking about putting a robots text on the landing page. Now, this does, of course, mean that Google has to land on that page to read that there is a robots meta no index there. So crawl budget wise, you are using it. However, with PageRank, this would be what's known as a dangling link, and Google disregard two kinds of links from all PageRank calculations: dangling links and orphan pages. If it can't determine a link to a page, that page is an orphan page and is completely removed from PageRank calculations. And if a link goes to a page that either hasn't been crawled, so Google couldn't know if it was no indexed or not, or that is no indexed or blocked by robots text, that's called a dangling link, and again removed from the calculations. It's not part of PageRank. So that answers that part, but the rest of it, with the crawl budget and stuff like that, yeah, the better way is to use a robots text, because that way it doesn't even have to grab that URL. It might still do so, but it doesn't need to, because of course with the no index in the page, it's got to grab the page to know that it's no indexed.
Yeah. Okay. It's covered well. There we are. This one from Scott Finney, Amon. It's titled "Adding a blog Negatively Impacted My Search Results." I doubt that. But anyway, Scott said, he said, should I now remove the blog from my site? I'm located in Collierville, Tennessee. It's a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee. A couple of months ago, I launched a website to rank for Collierville SEO. There is very little search volume, under 10 searches a month for this. But I'm offering SEO services in the area. It would be nice to have a prospect see me at the top of the results. My Google My Business hit the snack bag in a couple of days. I didn't see any kind of sandbox in my area. I'm now going after ranking my website pages in organic search. A couple of weeks ago, on the 29th of December last year, I added a blog to the site under Learn a Local SEO in my main menu. I started publishing blog posts on the topic of local SEO. Within a few days of publishing my first blog post, the Collierville SEO page I had sitting on results page 3 or 4 dropped, and www.dropthestrap.com/blog took its place in the search results. I see this as a negative. Do you agree? Shouldn't I want a website page or the home page to rank above my blog page? What do I do next? The three options I see from here: 1, get rid of the blog. Instead of posting blog posts, I have a Learn Local SEO page. It will continue to grow as I add video and text content to it. Instead of blog posts, I'll just add to this ever-growing page. This would mean I remove the blog from my site. Damn it, I've lost my track. Here we are. I keep the Learn Local SEO menu tab, but link to this growing page of content when I create a YouTube video or write up a quick lesson. Or 2, stay the course, continue to post blog content and link to my homepage and or my Collierville local SEO services page in the blog. And 3, he said, I have it all wrong and I need dumb SEO questions to tell me what to do next. Thank you in advance for any and all the replies.
Yeah. Dawn Anderson has made a comment there that it sounds like doorway pages or thin content pages. There is an element to that we'd certainly want to consider. Okay, you want this small community subsection to rank, then it needs its own content. It shouldn't be duplicated on the blog. If you've got this very small site and your bigger site covers the same topic, even to link to it, there's a very good chance that it will outrank it. Of course it will. You know, the bigger site has more authority. That doesn't necessarily mean that the smaller site won't have the advantage when it gets to local search, because local search doesn't use PageRank. The actual local search, map search, does not use PageRank at all. There are other forms of citations that it uses, and those are more important. So it shouldn't be happening in true local on the maps kind of search. But in the main section of search, yeah, you're going to be getting what we call cannibalization, where you're, basically stealing your own positions. It's not necessarily that the blog is the negative, it's how you're blogging that isn't optimal. Any page you add to a site, needs to add value, and it needs to add significant value, because otherwise this is another URL that Google's got to crawl. It's a percentage of your crawl budget. It's a percentage of the link flow around your site. And if it isn't adding as much as it's detracting from all the others, then it is going to be a negative. Let's say you've got 10 pages and you create an 11th page. You have downgraded the share of link popularity in whatever measure you're using and authority by 10%. When you create this new page, it's 10% less that every other page is getting. Now, unless that new page is adding 10% in total value to the site, you're of course dealing with a mathematical negative. You're diluting the effect. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily matter. When the topicality, the relevance of that page is very strong, then the authority aspects are slightly less important. When one person you've never heard of is talking exactly about a topic, that's a lot better than somebody incredibly popular who's talking generally about a topic, and it might cover what you want or it might not. Google is all about relevance. Importance factors into that, but its relevance is still key. With the Collierville site, it should have its own site. It should be specific about Collierville. It should be talking specifically about the kinds of industries, the kind of needs for that region, and pretty much operating as a standalone. If you're doing too much interlinking, if you're making it clear that this is just a local doorway, you're not dealing with an optimal idea there. Anything to add to that, Jim?
No, mate. I'm well. I know you covered it perfectly. The only thing, I wish people would relax more and just go ahead and do these things and not be. I mean, I understand that the thinking behind it. You've got to do it right. But anyway, yeah.
The one thing I would add to this really is, okay, you're doing your local SEO focus, but this shows to me, that you still need to learn a few more things about local SEO yourself before you go inviting other people to stake their livelihoods on your skill in this. I know you want the money, I know you want the business, but honestly, there's a lot more to learn. And those companies that hire you, the last thing they deserve is to be the fuel for your mistakes. Don't use them as a learning exercise. Learn first and use the stuff you know works and you know why it works for their benefit.
Yeah, good point, Eamon. For Scott, if you want to take that on board and you get on top of local SEO, why not join Google's Google My Business community and answer a few questions? I guarantee if you do that within 90 days, you'll be on top of the game.
Yeah.
And
you should definitely be a contributor on maps for the area as well, because that will again teach you something and offer you the chance to be boosting business in that area generally, because the more you boost the businesses that aren't paying for you, the more chance that they'll grow to the level where they are able to hire you, and you'll have learned for free all the tricks you need to be able to do a better professional service.
Yep, super. All right, let's go to the next. This one from Brian Michael. It's an e-commerce question. Should you index categories and product tags?
Yeah, this is another of the classic it depends answers. Absolutely. I personally like to choose one or the other. Either you categorize carefully and you have the categories index and you don't use tags, or you have a looser structure where you tag everything and it sort of forms its own cloud and you don't use categories, because otherwise you are going to get near duplications between categories and tags. It's very, very difficult not to get duplication when you use both categories and tags. There are ways of doing it, but it is an absolute nightmare of ontology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for preference, I don't know, but categories it is yeah. If you're going to drop one, I'd drop tags.
Yeah.
Okay.
And remember that everything should have one category. Don't multiple categorize things. Tags are the way that you do that when you don't know how to have an ontology, but you're stronger having an ontology, and your categories should mean that everything has one category it belongs to.
Excellent, mate. All right, let's go to the next. This one from Santa Seal Mabatha on who can give a precise definition of what domain authority is.
Well, several people can give you a precise definition, and there'll be completely different precise definitions. If you ask Moz, it's their own metric of how they measure link popularity and link strength around the web. They borrowed the term domain authority, was something we talked about. It wasn't something Google used. Google have often talked about authority, but never about domain authority as such. Domain authority was a term SEOs used to talk about the general power of links going to a site and the amount of share of that the navigation of the sites tended to spread around. So a, say, second tier deep page would have a measure of strength that was far above what was directly linking to that page, by virtue of the fact that all of these other important pages on this site were linking to it. And we talked about this as domain authority, the links that weren't coming from outside, but were coming from within the domain, the links to the entire domain being shared around. Moz tried to model this and created a DA metric. If you like it, great. If you expect it to match anything search engines are doing, you're going to be gravely disappointed. There are many different models of the ways you weight links, and Google do not reveal how they weight links. Just because the links are all on a page doesn't mean they all count. It certainly doesn't mean that they all count equally. You can look up a set of papers that Google had on the reasonable surfer. The original model for PageRank was called the random surfer, and it measured links by the sheer chance that if you set a crawler loose and it could only exit a page by following a link, and it would go on forever, what was the chances of it landing on any one particular page relative to the chances of it landing on any other? That's what it was. That's how the original PageRank worked. But since then, we've had page segmentation, so it can learn the difference between links that are in the footer, links that are in the menu, links that are in the main content, where main content are much more likely to get clicked. We've had things where we know that, you know, certain links can be tagged. We know that there are things, generated content links tend to be worth less than other places. If you've got a forum and everyone's got footer links, that teaches the search engine that most of the time the links are not specifically relevant to the content. They're generally relevant, i.e. it's a link from somebody who was interested in a community about this, but that means it carries very little weight. So domain authority, the original meaning is it's a general idea of the link juice spread around a site. The specifics that Moz used, it's one of the ways that they measure links, but it's nothing like the way search engines measure links.
Yeah, a good answer. Okay, Ammon, let's try the next one. And here's one from Maria Patterson on the text-to-code ratio for a category page. Maria said, "Hi everyone. If I have text-to-code ratio for a category page at 9.78%, a recommendation is that I still try to get it to at least 10%. What are the group's thoughts for a benchmark text-to-code ratio?" It doesn't matter. It is an e-commerce category page with 24 products per page, paginated too, and has a paragraph of content relevant to the category of about 150 words. Should I add a bit more content to the paragraph, or drop the number of products per page, or take a chill pill? Please give Maria the news, Ammon.
Okay, definitely take a chill pill. I do look at content to code ratios, but only in respect to the fact that I want pages to be fast, and Google wants pages to be fast, and the users want pages to be fast. And if you've got a lot of heavy code that has to be downloaded with that page that isn't being reflected in the content, you're slowing the page for no real advantage. However, adding content just for the sake of adding content to get the ratio different is only slowing your page even further, because you're adding bytes of code in form of words. So that would not make any sense. You're actually making the problem worse in the area it really goes to. Is there an ideal content to code ratio? No. The ratio that you're always trying to get is that the content should be as high as possible and the code should be as low as possible. Ultimately, that's it. You're not looking at anything beyond that. We talk about content to code ratio simply for the fact that some sites have immense amount of code to deliver very little content. You know, the relevance is low for the amount of code, the amount of bandwidth that's being wasted on downloading this resource. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think I'd like to add though that generally the amount of code on a page is not as significant a throttling than the images, like a single unoptimized image or an unscaled image, that probably does more damage than that. Yes, sure, you should try to get your code, use as little code as possible, but certainly wouldn't be changing content to try and achieve some magic number.
Yeah, exactly that. I think one of the problems today is that so many people use libraries, whether it's JavaScript libraries or CSS libraries, and they're usually making you download an awful lot more features than you need. You know, it's got everything you could do in this file rather than what you're actually using. Ideally, your developer will have cut that down. He will have trimmed it down to only the bits you're using. But there are times when that can actually be a little bit slower. I use a Bootstrap framework for one of my websites, and I deliberately used the full version, even though I'm only using about half of it. But I do so because it's served from one of the major CDNs, the content delivery networks. There's a very good chance about 30% of users will already have it cached from having looked at any other sites. If they're coming to my site, the very first thing they do in a browser, their cache is empty, yeah, it's going to slow them down a bit. But for most users, it's going to be that little bit faster because there's a very good chance that they've already cached that full version on some other site they've looked at, and therefore it's instant when they open my site.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next. Did I tweet that or not? Yes, I did. A lot of these things happen, Ammon, only because I'm an idiot. Toker Janelides asked a question titled Internal Linked Use Flow. He said, internal linking, page 1 links to page 2 and 3, page 2 links to page 1 and 3, and page 3, I wonder if this is a typo, page 3 links to page 1.
I think it's a typo there. I think that last one would be page 3 links to 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Every page links to 2 others. That sounds normal. That sounds like what a navigation does. Is it useful? Well, considering it covers all of the pages, yes, it is. You'd need a more complex example, I think, to get at whatever question you're trying to get to. You know, if you have those as sections and then you're looking at how the sections link to other pages in the same section and how they link to pages within other sections, that's when it starts to get to a useful level of complexity. Is it white hat or against Google? Well, you're not blocking anything there. You're linking to everything. That's perfectly white hat. The other question you had where you were talking about blocking certain pages, that is where, and particularly for PageRank, then that was against Google's terms of service. This isn't.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next. This one from Vijay Thacker, it's regarding keyword density and keyword stuffing. Vijay said, I'm confused about keyword density and keyword stuffing. Can anybody explain to me step by step? Please go ahead.
Right. Well, the first thing is keyword density is a nonsense. It's a term, a bit like domain authority, that SEOs invented to talk about the way they were using keywords without having to give away what keywords they were. Back in the early days of the internet, we concealed our identities. We all had forum names. Mine was Black Knight. We didn't use our real names so that people couldn't look up what domains we might be talking about, because we didn't want our competitors, who were probably in the same SEO forums, knowing what we were doing, knowing our exact strategies. Keyword density was part of a triumvirate of measures for talking about keywords. We had keyword density, keyword prominence, and keyword count. Count was the number of times overall you used it. Density was the proportion of words that were keywords to words that were not. And prominence was how early in the text those words were appearing. You know, if it's the very first word in a title, then it's got 100% prominence. If it's in the middle, then it might have a 50% prominence within the title, and then we'd have a different prominence for each paragraph and the page as a whole. They were ways for SEOs to talk about how they were using keywords. They were never anything that search engines used, ever. Search engines were far more advanced than this on day one, because they'd been information retrieval had been dealing with electronic documents, with databases, with email for 20 years before the web came along. And it had already gone way beyond the stage of worrying about just keyword density and things like that. By the time the web came along, it was far more advanced. In the 80s, a man called John Kleinberg, who is, if you're ever interested in search, somebody whose name you should know, worked with IBM on something called the Clever project. Now, Kleinberg's really important because he was a lecturer and professor of information retrieval connected with several of the universities that all of the top engineers of search engines came from, particularly Stanford. He had close working relationship with Stanford. You can guarantee that young Sergey Brin attended some of his lectures. In fact, I believe they were kids in his neighborhood. They lived close to him. He did a thing called the Clever Project, and this was looking at hubs and authorities. It was a way of trying to determine what documents were about just on their links. Sound familiar? Yeah, this was done in the 80s, and yet it's the predecessor of Google. It's the predecessor of PageRank. The problem was it couldn't scale, and young Sergey and Page found a way around that, a way of calculating that was actually based on the way Nobel Prize winners could be predicted by the number of citations they received in other papers. Keyword density, obviously, it's way too childish. Even by the 80s, before the web came along, information retrieval was far, far beyond that kind of nonsense. Do they worry about keyword stuffing? Yes. But the way they measure it isn't by keyword density, and certainly keyword density isn't going to do you any good. If you go for specific densities, it's a nonsense. More recent years, we've seen the rise in semantic search. And semantic search is about getting at the meaning behind words rather than the words themselves. So when I say pub, it understands that, you know, a pub is a public house, is a bar, is a drinking establishment, and all of those other ways of saying pub, and it can actually match any of those keywords in relation to my search because it understands what I mean, and it's looking for all other words that mean the same thing. So to a very large extent, semantic search is the opposite of keywords, and keywords are becoming less and less important. The exact words you use aren't as important as the concepts you're discussing and the quality of your article or discussion of that concept.
Yep, and I must, I won't read them all, but I'll read one of our forum heroes, Dave Elliott, who answers questions as they appear on our Facebook group, Dumb SEO Questions. He said, 2, write naturally about the subject. 3, don't care about keyword density. And 4, go to the pub. Never a truer word was spoken.
Indeed.
Okay, let's go to the next. This one from Brian Michael. On SEO steps for changing a URL. He said, what is the order of operations for a WordPress URL change? Is it set up 301s first, then change the site URL and home URL in the settings? I imagine he means Google Search Console, to reflect the new domain. It's hosted on Bluehost, if that helps.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, obviously, you've got to have a document at the position that you're going to be redirecting everyone to before you can redirect people there. You don't want to be serving a 301 to a 404. So to that extent, obviously, you've got to move the page or at least copy the page before you can add the 301. I'm not sure whether he's wanting specific technical steps on how to do this with Bluehost. If so, I'm not using Bluehost. I wouldn't know the specifics. But the 301s are for people using the old URL. A 301 literally means this document has moved. Please update your bookmarks and links. That's what it means, and it gives them the new URL that they should be using instead. But you obviously want to have something on that URL before you go telling them to change to that.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next. We're charging through these, Ammon. I think we've got about 5 to go. We're up to number 17 on the run list. This one from Brian Michael. What do we say about multiple H1s on a page?
We say, hello, multiple H1s.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but it's not banned. Early on in the web, a lot of people used visual page editors, and sometimes they liked the way a H1 looked, you know, nice and big, and therefore would use the H1 for every heading. Is it semantically correct? Is it correct on a code level? No, it's not. Does Google care? Not necessarily. However, it indicates that you don't know the structural thing, and therefore, if it was looking at the structure of a document for clues as to, you know, the relative weights of various bits of context, the very fact you used more than one would probably tell it that it shouldn't put any extra weight on any of them, that you might just be using this because you like that text big. And, you know, it may be click here that you've wrapped in a H1 because you wanted that to be nice and big, but it's not going to tell them anything about the content or the context. So ideally use one H1. That's the original specs. Under HTML5, you can have different sections and segments that use multiple H1s. I prefer to have H1 as the heading for that entire page, and then H2s for the subheadings within that, the subsections, and then H3, you know, for the subsections within that. I like to use the headings to indicate structure, to indicate that this comes under this topic. We're talking ontology again. It's just we're talking about the ontology of content within one page rather than across categories.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this one from Nilesh Asar. And Nilesh has a question titled, how to find a Google penalty and how to recover it. Which we all wish we knew the answer to that one, Nilesh, but I wonder what Ammon has to say.
Point hundreds of really naff links at your site, and you'll probably find the Google penalty very, very easily indeed. How to recover from it? Well, you'd need to pretty much remove all of those links, to disavow the ones that you couldn't remove, and to build out some genuine stuff, and then submit for a check that you're clean to recover from it. Certain amounts of penalties you can recover automatically. If it's an automated penalty, panda and penguin, then fixing the conditions that made that happen will usually cause it to automatically lift. And if you go through that and it doesn't, the chances are you actually didn't remove the things that it was that was causing the penalty. Penalty is, you know, if you're trying to take shortcuts rather than do things that suit the users, things that suit the market, smart marketing. If you're trying to use code tricks instead of good business practices, you're likely to run a risk of penalties. And how to recover it: undo all of that rubbish you did and start doing it properly. That's the nutshell answer.
Yeah. Okay, let me tweet that. Oh, I probably already have. Yes, I have. And let's go to Muhammad Khalid's question. Does capture affect site ranking and traffic? I'm going to just say no and save your breath on this one, Emma. There's no disagreement.
Unless you have to fill in a capture to get to the page he's talking about. Unless the content is behind a capture, no. But if it's behind a capture, yes, it absolutely is going to block the search engine getting there.
Yep, that's right. Okay, I missed that. All right, let's go to. I won't do anything courageous again. I'm telling you now. Dana Theo Mabatha said, well, asked the question: how are alt tags used for images to help images rank higher?
Okay. An alt attribute to a link, the alt tags are there to provide an alternative for people who can't see images. It was originally there for blind or visually impaired users who would struggle to see that content, but their screen reader could read out the words for them. Search engines, of course, as AJ Cohn famously calls them, blind 5-year-olds, they don't see images. It's very difficult for a search engine to process images. They've been using machine learning recently, but it's very, very intensive. Google do not use optical character recognition. Although the technique is around, although it's been around for years, and although it works, it doesn't scale. There are far better things that Google can be using the computer time, the computer cycles for, than just trying to work out what words are in an image and whether they matter or not, or whether those words are in the image because there's a truck going past with those words on the side and it's got nothing to do with why the picture was taken or what the picture is trying to tell you about. How they are used is they should be providing a verbal alternative, a textual explanation of what that link is about. But always write them thinking of a blind user and their screen reader reading those words out, because that's what will happen every time somebody with a screen reader is visiting that page. And if you've just stuffed keywords in there, man, that looks bad.
Yeah. Okay, and also, look, I can't let this pass without thanking our forum heroes that answer questions through the week. Ammon, you're one of them. Jody Nesbitt, Alan Blowice, Jeremy North. There's just so many I can't begin to answer. But look, your help and assistance is greatly appreciated, and we thank you. All right, this one from Alan Blowice. This is a news article. Well, it's actually not. It's Chase asked a question, and I'm getting confused here. Ammon, can you help me out?
Okay, Google have recently announced that they will process longer meta descriptions. The announcement is new. The ability of Google to process longer meta descriptions isn't. It just wasn't documented. Back in 2004, when I was at Create the Site, one of the guys there was a gentleman called Ron Carnell. long time SEO, dates back to the really, really early forums. And he ran a poetry site. And he used to put entire poems into the meta description. And although Google could only use the 140 to 160 characters, it would choose which 140 to 160 characters it used from anything up to 1,000. So he could put an entire sonnet by Shakespeare in there, and whichever snippet somebody used as a code to try and find it would be the part that Google would pull up as its section of that description. It's not new. This is old stuff. And Google will, in our experience, process 1,000 characters. The announcement is new, but it's not a new facility. This has been around a long, long time.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next. Another news article posted by Richard Hearn this time on our Dumb SEO Questions Facebook group. But I'll leave that for you to read at your leisure. You'll find the post from Richard Hearn on the Dumb SEO Questions Facebook group. And now we're at that time of the week. I didn't think we'd make it, Ammon, but we did.
Yeah, we did.
We've answered all of the questions asked on the SEO Questions community on Google Plus and the Dumb SEO Questions Facebook group. We'll be back at the same time next week to do this all again. But before that, I must thank the people still watching us and those that were watching us earlier. We thank you for your interest in us. It makes what we do worthwhile, and for that we're most grateful. We'll see you next week, but for now, we're gone.